The Ontario government is in the process of canceling a $100 million deal with Starlink, Elon Musk's company. Now, I am saying in the process because there is so much breaking news right now that it's hard to record anything without thinking this video may be out of date by the time I upload it. Because Donald Trump and Mexico, or I should say the US and Mexico, have just reached a deal to pause tariffs for a month while a deal is negotiated. Now, is Canada next? Possibly. So there's a great breakdown here of the timeline from America's Lounge Singer, Krang here, showing first this from the first Donald Trump signs an order imposing tariffs on imports from Mexico, Canada, and China with a pledge for more if they retaliate. 2 days later, Wall Street drops as Trump's tariffs hit markets worldwide. The Dow down 550 points. Followed by this, Trump says he will hold talks with Canada and Mexico tomorrow regarding tariffs. And we already saw one of them is being paused. Canada could be the next to be paused. But if that doesn't happen, then we are seeing a surprisingly good response from Doug Ford. I'm saying surprising because he has been incredibly terrible in other areas, but I'll get to an example of that in a bit. But this is, look, I criticized Ford quite a bit. You can see on my channel, but I'm also going to give him credit where it's due, and it's definitely due here. This is fantastic. He writes, starting today and until U.S. tariffs are removed, Ontario is banning American companies from provincial contracts. Every year, the Ontario government and its agencies spend $30 billion on procurement, alongside our $200 billion plan to build Ontario. U.S.-based businesses will now lose out on tens of billions of dollars in new revenues. They only have Trump to blame. We're going one step further. We'll be ripping up the province's contract with Starlink. Ontario won't do business with people hell-bent on destroying our economy. Canada didn't start this fight with the U.S., but you better believe we're ready to win it. This is something that has been picking up steam over the past couple of days. Online, a lot of people pushing this idea and tagging Doug Ford in it that they need to cancel this deal with Starlink because it's a $100 million deal with Starlink that really was not necessary. I'm going to get to that in a second here. But I assume he heard those cries. He heard that push from people out there and is indeed following through. So this has to do with this insane deal. So Starlink had won a competitive bidding process to run a satellite-based internet program for roughly 15,000 households and businesses beginning in June 2025. So that was, by the way, after these threats were made. So this is a story from back in November. Trump threatened to levy blanket tariffs of 10%. It was only 10% at the time on all goods coming into the U.S. Doug Ford has dismissed the threat, suggesting he doesn't think tariffs on products from the province are likely. Quote, he tried that last time and didn't last too long. It lasted about 4 weeks. So Ford might be right. I highlighted this to say, hey, look how Doug Ford's wrong. He might actually be right, considering what just happened with Mexico. And the timeline of previous tariffs, this is Trump. This is what Trump did before. Though it wasn't as, let's be clear, it wasn't a blanket 25% on everything. They were more targeted at the time. But in 2018, the U.S. announced tariffs on 25% on imports of Canadian steel and 10% on aluminum. And that they cited the lack of progress on NAFTA negotiations. That's when they were negotiating the USMCA, and Canada retaliated in that instance as well. And then a year later, Canada and the U.S. agreed to end the tariffs, and then Trump brought them back again. A year after that, this is August 2020, Trump reinstates tariff on Canadian aluminum, only to then call them off a few weeks later. So this has been an ongoing thing, and now it's 25% on everything, which is insane. And the markets that, that Trump cares so much about are reacting to it. He may change his mind. I want to highlight this because I can't do a video just praising Doug Ford. It's not possible. We have to give context here. The NDP is highlighting what they say are bad deals signed by PC leader Doug Ford. So these are a few examples of some of the terrible things Ford has done. weakened Canadian content requirements for Ontario line subway vehicles, reducing opportunities for workers in Thunder Bay, spent $650 million to break a contract that could help his buddies at 7-Eleven make more profit, choose to give American mega corporations like Walmart and Staples millions of dollars to retrofit their stores rather than investing in keeping jobs public. This, by the way, was supposed to cost just $1 million. Not that it was a good deal to begin with, but cost $1 million to retrofit these stores. Ended up being, I think, about 11 million. So $10 million difference in what, or I should say, tenfold difference in what it was supposed to cost. Handed over $100 million to Starlink. We just discussed that. Signed a sketchy 99-year lease with an Austrian company to build a luxury spa that every Ontario household will now subsidize for $400 each. And tried to sell off the Greenbelt to his wealthy friends, resulting in an ongoing RCMP corruption investigation into his government, which I have done several videos on. Now, I do want to briefly mention Starlink again here. So the Starlink deal was intended to reach households that are more remote, or I should say, not just households, but also companies that were more remote and needed high-speed internet. So you could argue, hey, this was trying to help people. The thing is, Starlink doesn't need the money. The whole Starlink business model is internet for people in remote areas. You shouldn't need to hand them money for customers that they want anyways. This reminds me of government contracts for big arenas where billionaires are begging the public for money to build, a new stadium. No, you can afford to do that yourself. You're the one that's going to be benefiting from the new arena. Why does the public have to subsidize you? So all these subsidies, all these government contracts for companies that want to do the business anyway is so absurd. Hand that money over to the actual communities so that they can decide how they want to use that 100 million. You don't need to hand it straight to Elon Musk. So even if these tariffs are paused or don't go through, this contract should still be canceled, because this is not benefiting anybody except Elon Musk. These places can still receive high-speed internet if they're given that money. Believe me, companies will find a way to deliver high speed there, especially if they were already in a process or they were in a bidding process for this. That means there were other companies that wanted to do this. You don't need to hand the money to Elon Musk. So, last thing here, I just wanted to mention the horrible job that Ford has done when it comes to healthcare. I want to be clear. There's an election going on in Ontario. So this, I haven't really had time to properly cover it. So I'm finding ways in other videos to mention issues here and there. But the absolute giveaway to staffing agencies that the Ford government has done. So CBC here, how nursing staffing agencies are costing Ontario hospitals untold millions. Auditor General report finds agencies charge hospitals as much as $160 an hour for a registered nurse, which is significantly higher hourly rates than they pay nurses directly. So instead of just hiring more nurses directly, they're handing this money to staffing agencies so that whoever's running these agencies can make millions of dollars in profit. Why? This is a complete giveaway, again, to Doug Ford's buddies. The report found some hospitals that more than tripled their spending on agency nurses in the course of just 1 year, from 2021 to 22 to 22 to 23, while hospitals in Northern Ontario saw a 25-fold increase in their use of agency nurses over a 4-year stretch. It's just a complete giveaway to private industry for no reason. You don't need these staffing agencies when you can hire the nurses directly. That's one example of how we screwed up healthcare. There's many examples. But that said, good job, Doug Ford. Good job. Good job announcing the cancellation of this contract. We're going to see if it goes through. But I think this is something that absolutely needs to happen, and credit where it's due.